Okay, then, let's check out this video from X Go Solo. Never checked out any of the videos. Let's drop a preemptive like. The most underrated aspect of Wuthering Waves. Okay, let's have a look what it is then. What do they think it is?
Every single time I hear a conversation about Wuthering Waves,
Oh, God. Oh,
it's always like the same three topics. Hey, did you see the leaks? How hot is XYZ? And who can forget the good old-fashioned meta discussion? And all of these conversation topics, they're okay. You know, they're fine. I'm not gonna diss people for having fun. But me personally, there's always been one aspect of this game that I enjoy more than pretty much anything else. One that I feel more often than not gets completely overshadowed in the way that
it's definitely not using this guy. That's for the only standard character that I don't have in the game, and I am not mad about it.
Been implemented. And that, my friends, would be this game's boss fights, which I genuinely believe to be.
Is it really that underrated though? I feel like the boss fights in this game are universally like applauded, in my opinion. Now maybe other stuff, maybe I don't know. Does anything else outshine it? I think most people really like, you know, appreciate the quality in the boss fights in this game. You know, the skill expression, the difficulty sometimes. Obviously, as you level up, that becomes less and less. But you know, when you first started doing some of the harder stuff, you know, your introduction to the holograms, and then you started going up a few levels, you're like, oh wait a minute, okay, this is kind of cool.
The most fun aspect of any gacha game I've played in the last like 5 years. Oh yeah, and a bit of a warning before we get into this video. The background footage you're watching right now is me fighting a hologram boss solo with Lin Yang for the very first time, so it's very likely
Crownless really is Igris, isn't he? You know, from solo leveling. I just feel like when it starts kicking and punching, I'm just like, damn, dude. It's what it feels like.
You're going to watch me get my ass beat over and over, but just know this is like my first attempt. Anyway, because I enjoy talking about things that don't matter, let's tell you all about these boss fights and why I enjoy them.
Hey, that's perfect for me then, man, because that's basically 99% of my content right there. Talking about shit that don't matter.
You know, I'm easy to please. Give me 4 chicken nuggets and fries for dinner. That's fine by me. You know, I go outside, I do my work, I come inside, I sit down, I play a video game, and there you go, that's entertainment as well. Basically, I've never really been a fan of the good old fancy stuff. I don't need a nice pair of shoes or a fast car. I'm very content with my own little bubble and things that I can accomplish entertainment with.
Hey, I'm the same. I never used to be when I was younger. I definitely wanted more. As I've got older, I am content just to have a roof over my head, food in my belly, and some really cool video games to play, and surrounded by people I love. I don't really spend much money on clothes or shoes anymore, cars, none of that. You know, I just don't care, man. Or video games good.
On the relative cheap. That being said, the only thing your video game really needs to please me is a decent to above average boss with a good boss theme, and if you don't have the good boss theme, you better hope that that boss fight is actually engaging. For the longest time though, whenever I played a gacha game, I was going up there with the expectation that the bosses are just gonna have some hard counter to the current character, and then they're just gonna be a damage sponge for everybody else. And Honkai Star Rail ended up being a pretty perfect example of that, where the bosses were flashy, and they were totally beatable with any character you really wanted to use within reason, right? However, it was always a statistical fact that there was one strategy based on one character at the time that would just absolutely obliterate.
I think the fact is, though, that's where, for all the good things about Star Rail, because I do like Star Rail, I think just being a turn-based gacha live service game, that's always going to be a thing, isn't it? Because the way content's built around in a gacha, that it's going to make it a little bit more limited in regards to, well, let's face it, there's no skill expression. It's about knowing the game, knowing your teams, your skills, the stuff that you need to be doing. You know, where a game like Wuwa and other action-based games, skill expression's a factor, isn't it? Obviously, all of that stuff comes in, the right teams, the right characters, but you are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, aren't you, at the end of the day, where in a turn-based game, not so much. Now, I love turn-based games. I just think as you extend into a live service, I think it starts to become harder and harder to make it continue to be appealing in that regard and interesting in regards to the combat. And I'm not taking anything away from Star Rail. I really like Star Rail.
Rate them. And if you don't believe that, Black Swan was the counter to the meme, Acheron ended up being the counter to Avengerine, the puppets were countered by Firefly, and now He Who is being countered by Fijao. That's the cycle. It's always been that way. And I don't really like that, because it creates this weird-ass power dynamic where you either have what you need to succeed and the boss is trivialized, or you don't have what you need and it feels like you're constantly getting by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah, this is what I've said. This was like one of the major issues where is probably the biggest reason why I haven't played Star Rail for a while. And I get it, this is gacha in general. That's the way it works. But it definitely is a game of have and have nots. And if you haven't, you know, as he said, you're getting by the skin of your teeth. And, you know, and if you have, you're clearing. It doesn't feel like there's that in between where with something like Wuthering Waves, you can have a team that's not optimal, but you can clear if you're really good, or you can have a team that's really great and sometimes not clear. You might just be having an off day, you might be getting caught out, or you just might not be as good as some of the other people on the game in regards to skill expression, and that's not a bad thing.
With a team that in any other form of content is completely okay. And what I've always wanted in a boss fight was something that actually required...
It gives a lot more space for improvement as well, doesn't it, as a player, rather than just being like, right, I've got the character now, I've got the gear, let's go clear it. Whereas with like something like Wuthering Waves, it's like, I've got the character, I've got the gear, well, let's go try and clear it now.
Some level of engagement, not me sitting there hoping that I get the crit this time, but an actual amount of agency that lets me overcome the obstacle. And much like with a lot of other issues I had in other gacha games, Wuthering Waves came along and it solved that problem in spades, with a cavalcade of boss fights that, to be completely honest, kicked my fucking teeth in on the first few fights.
I think everybody had that. Now, don't get me wrong, there might be some god gamers that didn't, but I think everybody had that experience, didn't they? Especially when you got introduced to the holograms. You did the first one, you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then you started leveling up and it was like, hold on a minute. What the hell, dude? As he said, you get your teeth kicked in and you're like, okay, this is different. I've got to be on it now. You know, my timing's got to be there. I've got to play the game. It can't just be about, now don't get me wrong, as you get leveled up and your roster built out, of course, your stats, your gear, having copies, all that sort of stuff help. But you can be under-geared, under-leveled, underpowered, and you can still clear content if your skill is good enough. It's going to be a lot harder, but, you know, it's attainable, and that's what's really good about WoW.
Wuthering Waves has done a lot of things that has recontextualized my enjoyment of different media, and while I'm absolutely not going to sit here and pretend like they do everything right, looking at you, daily system, you piece of shit. However, I do think...
Who's that? Who's that? You know what? This is one of the biggest problems in the Wuthering Waves community at the minute in the CC space. I think too many people glaze too hard. I think Kuro deserved to be glazed. Great company. But people act like everything they do is perfect. You know what I mean? They could go to the toilet and drop a shit right in front of you and they'd be like, oh, you know, they've just perfected the toilet. It's just like, you know, I definitely think the glazing needs to pull back a little bit from some
overall,
people.
In terms of gameplay, as in what we're actually doing in the game, and the commitment to fixing problems.
Wuthering Waves ruined shitting, you know? That'd be the title.
That players bring up, Wuthering Waves is doing a lot of things right, and the boss fights are by far my favorite. I will never forget the first time I found a boss in this game, as it lives up there in infamy with moments such as me falling down the labyrinth in Breath of the Wild and suddenly having 12 homing lasers directed at my person. I was just messing around, minding my own business. I think I was trying to get enough EXP so I can like do the next story quest, you know, somewhere in the area of the Scar boss fight, and I just see this little cavern and I think to myself, yeah, what's down there? So I go down there as a prime example as to why the male life expectancy is not as long as it should be, and suddenly there is a purple monster materializing, getting ready to molest my very person.
That is the beautiful part of open world games, though, isn't it? And it's something that you definitely lose. And as I said before, the open world become a distraction and a bit of a barrier to enjoyment of a game. But when you're first experiencing an open world and every new corner is, you know, ooh, what's around here? Every new area, there's something new to explore. A new, like he says, cave, tunnel, whatever. And you find it's that enjoyment in an open world game. Is one of the best things in my opinion. I love that exploration and finding new things, maybe getting your ass kicked and being like, right, I'm going back there when I'm ready for it kind of thing. It's a good time, man.
Immediately, I just go into fight or flight and just start trying to beat it with the best of my current ability. And for reference, the only boss I fought before this moment was Crownless, a extremely dumbed down version of him. The boss I was fighting in this moment was called Thundering Mephis, or it was one of the Mephises. It was the one without the weapon. It was just raw claws. And as I was just watching this thing's movements, I could tell this was not a regular enemy. And even if the boss health bar didn't give it away, the fact that it was teleporting around the stage and actively pursuing me with a bloodlust let me know, oh yeah, no, I'm not living this. And maybe it's because my extremely high IQ let me know in advance, or maybe it's because my low IQ got my ass blasted, but yeah, no, lo and behold, I got killed. So I go back, this time actually ready for what I'm about to fight, and it was pretty tough. I did manage to beat it, but it was by no means without a struggle. Mind you, the Thundering Mephis showed up at a stage in my game where I barely had any gear, even on a fully successful attempt at this boss where I countered and dodged every single attack while constantly
those early boss fights were something special, weren't they, though, in this game? They really were. Very enjoyable. Good gaming moments. I definitely agree with this. Like I say, I don't think bosses are underrated in this game, but talking it from this viewpoint and just thinking back to my first interactions with some of the enemies in the game and the bosses, and, they've been really cool moments, actually. Good gaming memory, so to speak.
Maintaining DPS, it would take me like 3 minutes. It was rough, and I felt like I was fighting for my life, a feeling that was only exemplified whenever the boss would stop attacking just to pace in circles around me like a predator stalking its prey. But as time went on, and as I fell the beast the first time around, I no longer had a reason to stay. I continued progressing the story, I come back, and this time, I absolutely fucking clown on him. It was not a challenge anymore, because I had over-leveled myself, I had geared up, I was ready to face it, and now the boss could actually be used as what it was supposed to be, a material farm. But in the event that I still, wanted that challenge, nothing was stopping me from just taking off my gear and throwing hands the raw dog style. A process that, if you do, allows you to fight the boss in a similar vein that you would on your first attempt, and all of
We'll have to start doing that some of the days, giving us some arbitrary challenges and just fighting some, some holograms and different enemies by doing that. Sounds fun, actually.
This was just my experience with one overworld boss. That doesn't even get into the monkey that throws itself around with a bunch of fake out attacks, or what I dub the Hell Rider, who after breaking him the first time gets a second toughness bar and decides the motorbike's gotta go. Then you have Scar, who is the master of fake out attacks with a bunch of different opening tells and almost no wind up after said tell, which if you are caught slacking will lead to you getting your ass beat. And then
I feel like Scar, especially in his goat form, was very much inspired by Elden Ring in that regards, in the way, and I hope we see more of that, actually, in the way they do the attacks and the tells and the openings and stuff, because obviously that's a good genre or a good set of games, the Souls games to take from for that sort of combat, in my opinion. That's combat that's difficult because you have to learn patterns, understand that sometimes a tell isn't always the tell you think it is, and that's the difficulty, rather than it just being right. Numbers go up, health goes up, go ahead, you know what I mean?
Then, even when you do get past that, now you have to fight the giant goat Scar, who, to be completely honest with you, is an extreme pushover. He's not hard at all, he's so goddamn big that, if you don't dodge his attack, that's on you. He's got, one fake out attack after he slams where, he pulses the ground, but it's not really that bad after that. But even after I beat all of these enemies, even after I systematically, one by one, went to them, exterminated them like the fucking pests that they are in the story of my life, I wasn't satisfied yet. Because, yeah, sure, I was beating these bosses, I was having a good time, I had the ability to challenge myself if I wanted to, but there was still something missing. That initial spark I had, that feeling that, yes, this enemy is about to show me the hands, you're gonna push my poo in, yet that...
That's one thing I do hope we get from in new regions. I hope that the big new regions. Now, might be asking for too much here, but I do, and I'm not expecting all enemies, but I'm expecting, elites and calamities. I want new ones and done in a way that does that. So you're engaging in content like that again. I know it's going to be, because you're never going to be able to get that initial you know, experience. It's like when you play something like a Fallout game back in the day, the first time you leave the vault in Fallout 3, it's like, whoa, the first encounter with like enemies that later on never have the same feeling. They never give you the same experience because you're used to the mechanics, you understand it, you're more powerful for one. Even in other playthroughs, you're just able to deal with them because you get the way the game works. But I hope they can try and do that, because I think that was one of my favourite things about Wuthering Waves and most open world games, is those encounters. And hopefully in the new regions they can do that. They can bring that aura back in that regard. Now, obviously, we'll be running leveled up. Maybe the way to do it is maybe at the start when you're initially going through the story, but then I don't know if people would like that. If, I don't know, maybe there's some way of nerfing your roster, or, you know, or the characters you're using within the story content when you, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much about it, but I you know, I just want to experience some experiences again. Don't know how they do that though, really.
That was gone. Like, I never felt threatened when
Without
I saw
tying
these
your hands
guys at
behind
this
your back,
point.
and I
When
know
I was
people
running
like
around
that.
with Dan Jin, Ling Yang, and like Bai Ji, yeah, it was a bit of a problem. But now I have Verena, Lin Yang, because I still hate myself, and then San He, which is pretty much as good as it gets for this guy. These enemies, they're not going to touch me. And even if they did, I might have to, you know, crack into 3 or 4 of my 5,000 healing items that I've been hoarding for the last 3 hours. But lo and behold, as I'm sitting there, a bloody knuckled war twink just thirsting for one more creature to enact violence upon, the developers of Epoch stepped in and said, okay, yeah, no, we got something for you. And this system was none other than the holograms, the honest-to-God
Bloody knuckled war twink.
hardest bit of content I've ever done in any gacha game. And mind you, when I say hardest, I don't mean hard like the way MOC or Tower of Adversity is hard. We're like, oh, you either have what you have or you don't, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. No, I mean hard as in...
It was hard in the sense that they actually leveled up, you know, new patterns, new attacks. It was genuinely like, oh, okay, we're fighting harder enemies here. We're not just fighting bigger health pools. Just spat on my microphone. Bigger health pools and bigger attacks. You know, it was like, okay, this is a different fight. And that was really cool, actually.
And you need mechanical skill to beat this boss fight. Like, if you get beat and you have good gear, that's a fucking skill issue level of hard. I want a boss that is mechanically...
Yeah, I agree, Chase. At least. Again, I think sometimes I hope for a little bit too more. I want too much, I guess, which I just don't think is ever going to happen. But yeah, I agree. At least.
Unforgiven. I want to know that if I make a mistake, I'm going to get one shot, and I want to feel bad because of it. And here they are.
No, not so much a reset. I don't know, like... Maybe like that you're using specific trial characters through the story because they're really important in the new area and you have to use them, but then you're losing that choice and they're like lower leveled, you know, that you can't level them up, like, you know, you're just using them as a trial character and they're set to like level, I don't know, 50 or whatever, so the content's just harder because you just don't hit as heavy. And then when you're not out there, you're outside of the story, so if you can just go and do what you want. I don't know how you'd work it really. I think I'm just kind of wanting that experience again, but I just don't think you're going to be able to get it.
Are the holograms, a system in this game that comes in 5 different flavors of bodily harm. And even if you manage to fail 1 or 2 of the earlier levels with their enhanced attacks,
I worked too hard for my echoes and my levels and skills. That's what I'm saying, like, I feel people have been pissed.
Yeah, you know, we gave them a few more charges.
Not being taken away from your roster, just... I don't know. You know where in like Zenless, you've got the trial mode, and unless you turn it off, you use the characters that the game gives you. Maybe something like that within the story missions, where it's like that mode's on. This is the characters you get, and they're at a set level. So the content, but I don't know. I feel like removing that choice of playing who you want to play would be a detriment to the game as well.
Or just some fake outs. He now moves way more. That's all fine and good. But you know what he needs? He needs a Virgil skill. Yeah, you know that Virgil skill he has? If that shit hits you, it's over. Like, that's just it. You better learn that timing because he's gonna be throwing that out potentially dozens of times a match. And then, even after you finish that, yeah, guess what? Here comes the second one, ready to kick your teeth in as well. I love this so much. I mean, obviously, right? Like, I mean, I dedicate myself to going to these bosses and just trying to beat them with one character. Here's a fun fact for you, actually. Every single time I've logged into Wuthering Waves in the last few months, it wasn't to do dailies. Man, I've been overcapped on that for like a month and a half. The only time I ever log in is to fight the holograms. Call me a masochist? I don't know. Maybe that's what I am. But something is really enjoyable about feeling an entire foot get shoved up my ass because I missed 2 mechanics.
Pause.
I love these bosses to death. I could make multiple videos analyzing their hit frames and the exact actions that they're doing and how to dodge them, and honestly I might for future ones, but for old ones I feel like most people kind of know what to do. Maybe if there's enough interest in that, I will, but for now, that's pretty much all I had to say. I really just wanted an excuse to praise this game for something that no one seems to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is XGoSolo. Hope you
Alright, this is definitely a bit of a glazing video I can get behind, you know. I will glaze Kuro when I think Kuro needs glazing. Yeah. We don't need to glaze them on everything, though. Anyway, great video that was. Yeah, I'm going to drop this dude a sub, actually. I like his vibe, man. I like his vibe. I'll have to check out some more of his videos. But the most underrated aspect of Wuthering Waves, the bosses are insanely good in Wuthering Waves. Are they the most underrated aspect, though? I feel like they are, you know, I think they're given the respect they deserve, if I'm honest. I think a lot of people recognize that, especially holograms and bosses in this game, are pretty, pretty good content. It's a good time. They're well designed. They've got a decent difficulty, and they're fun. Yeah, yeah. Good video.